Thanks for tuning into my YouTube channel. Today's message is what happens when a person is being resurrected from the dead. In order to understand what happens when a person is being resurrected from the dead, it's best for us to know the way that we were designed by God. According to 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 verse 23, Paul shows that man is three persons in one. Paul says, I pray God that your spirit, soul, and body be blameless unto the coming of the Lord. He also shows that in Hebrews chapter 4 verse 12, that the spirit and soul is not the same as some persons believe. For Hebrews 4 and 12 says, for the word of God is quick, powerful, sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing even to the dividing asunder of soul and spirit. And also in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 16, he shows that the body is identified as a person and the spirit is identified as a person. But he shows that when you study the Bible, you'll see that the soul is also a person. Man is three persons in one. Paul said, although the outward man perish, talking the body, calling the body a man, he called him the outward man perish, 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 16, yet the inner man is being renewed day by day. That's in 2 Corinthians chapter 6, 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 16. Now in examining the scripture, you'll see that within man, as was previously stated, that man has a spirit and soul within its physical body. It's also seen in Psalm chapter 51 and verse 6 and verse 6 as well, that there's a spirit and soul within the human's body. Psalm 51 verse 6 says, behold, thou desire truth in the inward parts, and in the hidden part thou shalt make me to know wisdom. So it's talking about in the hidden parts, which is the spirit and soul. This is also mentioned in Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 33 says, for this shall be the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, said the Lord. I will put my law in their inward parts, and write them in their hearts, and be their God, and they shall be my people. So Jeremiah, the book of Jeremiah also mentioned the inward parts, which is the spirit and the soul. So now to understand what happens to a person when they're being resurrected from the dead, let us see what happens to a person when they're dying. Turn with me please to Genesis chapter 35. This is about Jacob's wife Rachel when she is dying. Genesis chapter 35, verses 18 says, and it came to pass as her soul was departing. Talking about Rachel, her soul was leaving her physical body. This is Genesis chapter 35, verse 18. And it came to pass as her soul was departing, for she died, that she called his name Benoni, but his father called him Benjamin. So it shows that her soul was leaving her physical body. Also, in 1 Kings chapter 17, verses 21 to 22. 1 Kings chapter 17, verse 21 and 22 says, and he stretched himself upon the child 3 times and cried unto the Lord and said, O Lord my God, I pray thee, let the child's soul come into him again. If he prayed for the child's soul to re-enter the child, his soul had to come out of him. Verse 22, and the Lord heard the voice of Elijah, and the soul of the child came into him again, and he revived. So you see, when the soul re-entered into his body, he became alive. So that helps us to understand somewhat about the resurrection. The soul has to go into the body for the body to come back to life. But when you examine the scriptures, the spirit and the soul has to re-enter the body for the person to be resurrected. Let us notice also in Genesis chapter 2 verse 7. Genesis chapter 2 verse 7 says, "And the Lord formed man of the dust of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul." You see the difference there? Breath or spirit. God breathed into Adam the breath of life, and Adam became alive. It's something like a resurrection. When God designed Adam, when he created Adam, he put within Adam the spirit, his spirit, and Adam became alive. It's like a resurrection. You see the spirit went into Adam, and Adam became alive. And you see the soul went into the young lad who Elijah resurrected. He became alive. So it shows that the spirit and the soul has to go inside of the body. Now let us see when the breath or the spirit leaves the body, what happens. Turn your attention with me to Psalm chapter 146. 146 verses 3 and 4, we'll read that. It says, "Put not your trust in princes, nor in the Son of Man, in whom there is no help. His breath goeth forth," say his breath goeth forth, means his breath leaves his body. "He returned to his earth," talking about the body returned to his earth. "In that very day his thought perished," talking about the physical body. Now this is a drawing I did. This is a painting somewhat I did. Now this represents the body here. This represents the body right here. The body, and this is the soul. The silver represents the soul, and the gold represents the spirit. So both the spirit and the soul have to come inside of the body, re-enter the body for it to be resurrected. Both the spirit and the soul has to come into the body for the body to be resurrected. Now I'm going through the scriptures to see that there are about 11 individuals that the Bible has recorded that was resurrected inside the Bible. Now there's one, it appears to be a resurrection, but it's not a resurrection. Let me turn there first to the book of Samuel. 1 Samuel chapter 28. 1 Samuel chapter 28. First Samuel chapter 28. Now notice this. It appears to be a resurrection, but it's not. "And Saul disguised himself and put on other garments, and he went, and 2 men with him. And they came to the woman by night, and he said, I pray thee, divine unto me by the familiar spirit. Divine unto me by the familiar spirit. And bring me him up, whom I shall name unto thee." Say, bring him up, who I shall name, give you this name. Verse 9. "And the woman said unto him, Behold, thou knowest what Saul had done, how he had cut off those that have familiar spirits, and the wizard out of the land. Wherefore then liest thou a snare? Wherefore then liest thou a snare for my life, to cause me to die?" Verse 13 of 28 of 1 Samuel. "And the king said unto her, Be not afraid, for what thou sawest. And the woman said unto Saul, I saw gods ascending out of the earth." I saw gods as ascending up out of the earth. Now we're talking about a resurrection. This is not a resurrection. This is familiar spirits coming up out of the earth. She said more than one. I saw gods coming up out of the earth. It's like a resurrection, but this is a familiar spirit pretending like this prophet Samuel. "And he said unto her, What form is he of. Now, the woman said she saw gods, more than one, coming up out of the earth. Now, Saul, in his mind, he's looking for Samuel, the prophet, for the woman to bring her from the dead. Now, he said unto her, what form is he? Because his mind is set on seeing Samuel. And she said, an old man cometh up, and he is covered with a mantle. And Saul perceived that it was, Samuel, and he stooped with his face to the ground and bowed himself. Verse 15, and Samuel said to Saul, why hast thou disquieted me to bring up me? And Saul answered, I am sore distressed, for the Philistine make war against me, and God is departed from me, and answered me no more, neither by prophets nor by dream. Therefore I have called thee, that thou mayest make me known unto me what I should do. Now this wasn't Saul. He thought it was Saul because that was in his mind. But these familiar spirits, they're familiar with Saul, therefore they appeared to the woman as if these demons, they appeared to the woman, the witch of Endor, as if they were the prophet Saul. Now, going through the scripture, we're going to see that there are several resurrections that took place of individuals. I'm going through them step by step, but I will somehow be reiterating that the spirit and the soul have to re-enter into the physical body, or enter into the body for it to be resurrected from the dead. Now, everyone wouldn't have flesh and blood and bone during the time of the resurrection. So what God will have to do, he'll have to create a brand new body, which they had from the beginning. He'll bring back that body somehow, miraculously bring back the old body, and have the spirit and soul to re-enter into the person to bring them back to life. So let us go to the first event in the Bible that is about the resurrection. We went over the scripture before, but we'll go over it another time and see something different at this time. That's 1 Kings chapter 17, verse 17 to 24. Here it says, and it came to pass after these things that the son of the woman, the mistress of the house, fell sick. And his sickness was so sore that there was no breath left in him. And she said unto Elijah, what have I to do with thee, O thou man of God? Art thou come unto me to call my sin to remembrance, and to slay my son? And he said unto her, give me thy son. And he took him out of her bosom, and carried him up into a loft, where he abode, and laid him upon his own bed. Verse 20, and he cried unto the Lord, and the Lord said, O Lord my God, hast thou also brought evil upon the widow with whom I sojourned, by slaying her son? Verse 21 and verse 22, and he stretched himself upon the child 3 times, and he cried unto the Lord, and said, O Lord my God, I pray thee, let this child's soul come into him again. And the Lord heard the voice of Elijah, and the soul of the child came into him again, and he revived. So that is the first recorded resurrection of Elijah resurrecting a young boy. But also his predecessor Elisha also resurrected a little boy. Also, let us turn our Bibles to 2 Kings chapter 4, verses 18 to 37. And notice this. So this will be the second resurrection we're looking at. 2 Kings chapter 4, verses 18. 2 Kings chapter 4, verses 18 to 37. Let me see how far I'm going to read. And when the child was grown, and it fall on the day that he went to his father to the reapers. And he said unto his father, my head, my head, my head. He said to the lad, carry him to his mother. Verse 20, and when he had taken him, and he brought him to his mother, he sat on her knees till noon, and he died. Said the young boy had a headache, and he ended up dying after a while. And 21 says, and she went up and laid him on the bed of the man of God, and shut the door upon him, and went out. And she called unto her husband and said, send me, I pray thee, one of the young men, and one of the asses, that I may run to the man of God, and come again. Verse 23, and he said, wherefore wilt thou go to him today? Is neither no new moon nor Sabbath? And she said, it shall be well. Then she saddled and asked, and said to her servant, drive and go forward. Slack not thy riding, except I bid thee. Let me go further down to save some time. It says, verse 8, then she said, did I desire son of my Lord? Did I not do not deceive me? Verse 29, and he said to Gehazi, gird up thy loins, and take me my staff in thine hand, and go thy way. If thou meet any man, salute him not, and if any salute thee, answer him not again. Lay my staff upon the face of the child. Verse 36, and he called Gehazi and said, call this Shunammite woman. So he called her, and when she was come into him, he said, take up thy son. Let's go from verse 32. And when Elijah was come into the house, behold, the child was dead, and laid upon his bed. That's verse 32 of 2 Kings chapter 4. 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 32 says, and when Elijah was come up into the house, behold, the child was dead, and laid upon his bed. Verse 33, then went in therefore, and shut the door upon them twain, and prayed unto the Lord. And he went up and lay upon the child, and put his mouth upon his mouth, and his eyes upon his eyes, and his hands upon his hands, and he stretched himself upon the child, and the flesh of the child waxed warm. Verse 35, then he returned, and walked in the house to and fro, and went up and stretched himself upon him, and the child sneezed 7 times, and the child opened his eyes. So it shows that Elijah, he returned and walked in the house to and fro, and went up and he stretched himself upon the child, and the child sneezed 7 times. So it shows that the child was resurrected. It says in 32 that the child died, and then it says that he sneezed 7 times after the man of God laid upon him. So he was resurrected. So this is the second resurrection that is recorded in the Bible so far. Also, there's an event about when Elisha died. And let me read that. Let's turn to 2 Kings chapter 13 and 20 and 21. 2 Kings 13, 20 and 21. And Elijah died, and there they buried him. And the bands of the Moabites invaded the land at the coming in of the year. And it came to pass, as they were burying a man, that behold, they spied a band of men, and they cast the man into the sepulchre of Elijah. And when the man was let down and touched the bones of Elijah, he revived and stood upon his feet. So they said they was burying this person, this man, carrying him, and there's a band of Moabite coming, and they threw the man's body on Elijah's bones, which was in the sepulchre. They threw his body on Elijah's bone, and the man resurrected. He stood upon his feet. For that to have happened, his spirit and his soul had to re-enter into his body for him to be brought back to life. So that's the third event of a resurrection that had happened inside of the Bible. In 2 Kings chapter 13, verse 20 to 21. Also, let us look at certain events of Jesus resurrecting about 3 persons. First, the woman of Nain's son. This will be the 4th resurrection that is recorded. It's found in Luke chapter 7, 11 to 15. Luke chapter 7, 11 to 15. Luke chapter 7, 11 to 15. Luke chapter 7, 11 to 15 says, "And it came to pass the day after that he went into a city called Nain, and many of his disciples went with him, and much people. Now when he came nigh to the gate of the city, behold, there was a dead man carried out, the only son of his mother, and she was a widow, and much people of the city was with her. And when the Lord saw her, he had compassion on her, and said unto her, Weep not. And he came and touched the bearer, and they that bare him stood still. And he said, Young man, I say unto thee, arise. And he that was dead sat up, and began to speak, and he delivered him to his mother." So it said that Jesus touched the bearers, and he commanded the young man to get up. And it said the young man stood up, and he started to speak, sat up and started to speak. For that to happen, his eternal spirit and immortal soul had to re-enter into his physical body for him to come back from the dead. So that's one event where Jesus resurrects an individual. Let us turn our attention also to Luke and notice about this girl, Jairus' daughter, who Jesus brought back to life. Jairus, the officer, a ruler in Israel. Let us look at that in Luke chapter 8, verses 41 to 42. Luke chapter 8, verses 41 to 42. It says, "And behold, there was a man named Jairus, and he was a ruler of the synagogue. And he fell down at Jesus' feet, and besought him that he would come into his house. 42, for he had one only daughter, about 12 years old of age, and she lay dying. But as he went, the people thronged him." Let us continue. Verse 50. "Now Jairus," verse 48 said, "And he said unto her," talking about the ruler of the synagogue, 49, "While he yet spake, there came one from the ruler of the synagogue house, saying to him, Thy daughter is dead, trouble not the master." So as Jesus was going along with the ruler to heal his daughter, the lady with the issue of blood touched Jesus. And it was interference. So the ruler had one of his servant came and said, "Do not trouble the master, your daughter is dead." Now when he was asking Jesus to come, his daughter was ill, sick very badly. Now his servant came and said, but when Jesus, 49, while he yet spake, there came one from the ruler of the synagogue's house, saying to him, "Thy daughter is dead, trouble not the master." Verse 50, "But Jesus, when he heard it, he answered him, saying, Fear not, but believe only, and she shall be made whole. And when he came into the house, he suffered not no man to go in, save Peter, James, and John, and the father and the mother of the maiden. And all weep and bewail her. But he said, Weep not, she is not dead, but sleepeth." Verse 53, "And they laughed him to scorn, knowing that she was dead. And he put them all out, and took her by the hand, and called her, saying, Maiden, arise. And her spirit came again, and she arose straightway. And he commanded to give her meat." So there you have it, another resurrection by Jesus Christ. But we also know by the resurrection of Lazarus how he was dead for 4 days, And Jesus called him forth and he came back to life. Now let's look at that in Luke chapter 11. Luke chapter 11, 38 and 44, 38 to 44. Luke chapter 11. Luke chapter 11, 38. Luke chapter 11, 38 to 44. Here it says, when the Pharisee saw it, he marveled that he had not first washed. Luke chapter 11, let me make sure. Luke chapter 11 verses 8. Oh, I've done on 8. 8, 41, 38, 38 to 44. It says, now the man out of whom the devil was cast, no, it's Luke chapter 11, but I'm on Luke chapter 9. Sorry, Luke chapter 11, 38. And when the Pharisee saw it, they marveled that he had first washed before dining. And the Lord said unto him, now ye Pharisees may clean the outside of the cup and the platter, but inwardly is full of ravenous and wickedness. Ye fools, and not he that made that which is without, that made that also which is in? Sorry, it's not Luke. It's John. Sorry, John. John chapter 11. John chapter 11 verses 38. This is about Lazarus being resurrected from the dead. St. John chapter 11, and verse 38 says, Jesus therefore again, groaning in himself, cometh to the grave. It was a cave, and a stone laid upon it. Jesus said, take away the stone. Martha, the sister of him that was dead, said unto him, Lord, by this time he stinketh, for he had been dead for 4 days. Notice verse 40. Jesus said unto her, said I not unto thee, that if thou wouldest believe that thou shouldst see the glory of God? Then they took away the stone from the place where the dead was laid. And Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, Father, I thank thee that thou hast heard me. And I knew that thou hearest me always, but because of the people which stand by, I said it, that they may believe that thou hast sent me. Verse 43, and when he had thus spoken, he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. And he that was dead came forth, bound hand and foot, and with grave clothes. And his face was bound about with napkin. Jesus said unto them, loose him and let him go. Now you see, that's another resurrection Jesus performed. But when you examine the scriptures, there's 3 resurrections Jesus performed. He did raise the lady son, the widow of Nain's son, Jairus' daughter, and Lazarus. But there's 4 resurrections Jesus did. He resurrected himself from the dead also. He said, destroy this body, and in 3 days I will raise it up. Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up. He was talking about himself. If they kill his body, he will resurrect himself from the dead. That's about Jesus, but I'll study about Jesus being resurrected at a later time. Also now, let us look at another resurrection that took place where Peter resurrected a lady by the name of Tabitha or Dorcas. Let us turn our attention to Acts chapter 9, verses 36. I notice Tabitha being resurrected by the apostle Peter. Now we have to keep in mind that man is spirit, soul, and body. So when a person is being resurrected from the dead, their spirit, their soul, their spirit and soul have to re-enter their body. Now, if their body is rotten, decay over thousands of years, the Lord will have to create a brand new body or bring back that same body in some way. He'll bring back the same body, and their spirit and soul will be re-entering into their bodies for them to be resurrected from the dead. Acts chapter 9. It says, now there was a Joppa, a disciple named Tabitha, which by interpretation is called Dorcas. This woman was full of good works and alms deeds which she did. And it came to pass in those days that she was sick and died. Whom, when they had washed, they laid her in an upper chamber, for as much as Lydda was nigh to Joppa. And the disciples had heard that Peter was there, they sent unto him 2 men, desiring him that he would not delay, but come there. Verse 39, then Peter arose and went with them. When he was come, they brought him into the upper chamber. And all the widows stood by him, weeping and showing the coats and garments, which Dorcas made while she was with them. It said what Dorcas made while she was with them. Now, the Bible says she was upstairs in the room laying down. That's her body. But her spirit and soul had left the body, so they said while she was with them, meaning she was with them alive in her spirit, soul, and her body. While she was with them, that's 39. For he said, but Peter put them all forth and kneeled down and prayed, and turning him to the body, said, Tabitha, arise. And she opened her eyes, and when Peter saw her, she sat up. That's verse 40. Said he called her by her name, Tabitha, arise. And she opened her eyes and she sat up. So that's another resurrection. That's the only resurrection that Peter performed. Now, the Apostle Paul also resurrected a young boy by the name of Eutychus. Paul, the Apostle, resurrected a young boy by the name of Eutychus. When you examine the book of Acts, you'll see that Paul was all night preaching. And this young fellow was up, sitting down in the windowsill, so to speak, on a 3-story high building. And it said he fell down and probably broke his neck. And Paul went down and Paul prayed for him. And when Paul hold him, he became alive. So that's the resurrection that is recorded by the Apostle Paul. This is about what happens when a person is being resurrected from the dead. In order to know what happens to a person when he's being resurrected from the dead, it's best to read the Bible and understand what happens when a person died. First, what happens when a person is the way we was designed by God will help you in understanding what happens when a person is being resurrected from the dead. I have a book that is entitled The Way We Were Designed by God. It's found on Amazon.com or goodread.com. Also have a book entitled What Happens When a Person is Being Resurrected. What happens to a person when he died? Is he still alive somewhere? And I have a book that is on Amazon.com or goodread.com that is entitled What Happens to a Person When He's Being Resurrected from the Dead. If you read those books in that order, what happens to a person when he dies? Is he still alive somewhere? Is the second book you should read. But the first one you should read is The Way We Were Designed by God. Then what happens to a person when he dies? Is he still alive somewhere? And then what happens to a person when he's being resurrected from the dead? You'll see that when a person is being resurrected from the dead, his eternal spirit and immortal soul will have to re-enter his physical body for him to be resurrected from the dead. But I have already mentioned certain of these scriptures inside of the Bible. I want to thank you for your time and for your attention. I'm Wenzell. Have a blessed day.